Our first speaker will be Professor Thomas Babor. As you can see from his bio on the screen, he comes to us officially from the University of Connecticut, although I happen to know that he is actually in his home in Maine in the USA. Tom is an absolute giant in our field, editor-in-chief of the Journal of Studies on Alcohol and Drugs, and the leader of the group that puts together the periodic review of all knowledge in our field, Alcohol, No Ordinary Commodity. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thanks, David. And okay, so the three Best Buys are a prominent part of the forthcoming third edition of No Ordinary Commodity. And I'm going to put those Best Buys in some context in terms of how the book that we have co-written with a large number of people from the field, how we want to communicate to not only the research community, but also to the people who make policy. So the book was put together in a format that goes back to the first iteration of this collaborative project. And that began with the Purple Book, Alcohol Control Policy in Public Health Perspective, sponsored by the Addiction Research Foundation and the Finnish Foundation and WHO, written by a group of co-authors led by Kettle Brun. The book set out an agenda for reviewing the epidemiological literature and the evidence base for policies that seemed to work at the time. It was remarkably prescient in terms of identifying per capita consumption as a major driver of alcohol problems in most societies, and in identifying some of the evidence, which was primitive at the time in 1975 when that book was published, supporting the role that pricing policies and availability restrictions could have on alcohol policy. The Purple Book was followed about 20 years later with Alcohol Policy and the Public Good, which was a book co-written again by a overlapping group of epidemiologists and public health professionals. And it built on the evidence that had accumulated over that 20-year period, making a much stronger case for the three Best Buys, which we are now considering today. In 2003, co-authors again got together and began revising the storyline and reviewing and updating the literature. And that started the sequence of books labeled Alcohol, No Ordinary Commodity. The first and second editions were published by Oxford University Press, and they sold almost 5,000 copies. We're now at the point where it's time to revise and update what we know. And for that, we are looking at a storyline that not only makes a strong case for why alcohol is no ordinary commodity, but also identifying where the global hotspots are, where alcohol policy is losing ground. Alcohol consumption and problems have stabilized in the high-income countries, but the burden is increasing dramatically in the most populous and vulnerable parts of the world, including Asia, Latin America, and Sub-Saharan Africa. The other thing in the storyline for the new edition is that the alcoholic beverage industry has morphed into a much more influential determinant of alcohol consumption than was heretofore realized. And it has evolved from a local producer of traditional alcoholic beverages over the past centuries to an inducer of growing demand for a wide range of alcohol products, which increasingly have been designed to increase alcohol consumption in almost every segment of the global population. The main part of the book, as in past editions, is to review the strategies and interventions that have been tried and tested. And we looked at approximately 70 of them. And what became clear is that the universal measures like pricing policies, availability restrictions, and marketing controls tend to be the most effective and seem to have the greatest amount of evidence. But targeted approaches directed at high-risk groups have a great deal to contribute as well. So what we're learning is that the scientific basis for alcohol policy has matured in its scope and sophistication, and there's now a growing need to apply this knowledge. The best practices that we identify in the book are derived from extensive reviews of the literature conducted not only by the speakers that you're going to hear today, Bundit Sorpazarn and Michael Livingston and Sally Caswell, but also reviews of the literature in many other areas. And we are in a position to indicate what really stands out as best practices in this field. We reviewed 5 pricing and taxation policies, 14 physical availability policies, and 3 restrictions on alcohol marketing. We've learned a lot in the almost 40-year history of putting these books together. And the most encouraging thing is that public health concepts can inform public policy, and policymakers pay attention to summaries of the evidence base. What happened in Russia is highlighted in the book in a 20-year period between 1980 and 2016 or 20. And it was a rather dramatic inverse relationship that has been reported in the literature between life expectancy and per capita alcohol consumption. And what appears to be responsible for a good deal of that variability, either increases in mortality or decreases in mortality, is alcohol policies and the type that you're going to hear about today. Each of those was imposed at different times during that period and had an impact. So the final thing I want to mention is that once the book is published, there's a dissemination strategy, and we would like to see the entire field of alcohol science and alcohol policy getting involved in disseminating the key messages. The book itself will be distributed for free in an online version, and we have stakeholders, organizations like GAPA and KBS Society and other organizations will be assisting with disseminating the free online version. WHO headquarters and Euro are working with the authors to put together webinars and policy briefs. And that is going to target not only the people who are advocating for WHO policies, but people in NGOs and government officials around the world who are interested in alcohol policies. And we're negotiating translations into multiple languages and conference symposia. If you, the audience, have other things to suggest, you're welcome to contact me or any of the authors. And the final word is that this slide presentation should be considered confidential. It's intended for GAPA members only until the book is published in March of 2022. The authors receive no funding for the preparation of the book. They're supported completely by their own institutions. All royalties go to the British Society for the Study of Addiction, and logistical support was provided by the Norwegian Health Directorate, the Finnish Foundation for Alcohol Studies, and the Society for the Study of Addiction. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Bundit, who's going to be talking about pricing policies.